Greetings. This is Hazel Moon bringing you simple Bible lessons to increase your faith and understanding of Jesus Christ the Messiah. Today's broadcast is Who is Jesus? Chapter 17, and the title is Jesus the Creator. John begins his gospel in chapter 1 by referring to Jesus as the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. John also calls Jesus the Creator, who made all things, and without him, not anything was made. In Jesus was life, who brings light to men. John continues to speak about Jesus as the Word, saying, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen his glory, glory as of the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth." John is giving testimony that he and others had been witnesses of Jesus and the mighty works that he had done. So as we go on, it's important for us to remember that John in his gospel called Jesus God, and that Jesus is the creator of all things. As Jesus ministered and healed many people, there were multitudes that surrounded him, pressing and pushing. I'm reminded that Jesus would often retreat to a desert place or a mountain to rest and pray to his Father God. One day by the sea, as the crowd circled around Jesus, he spied two ships as the fishermen were washing their nets. Jesus asked if he might sit in one of the boats, and they gave him permission, and they cast out just a little ways. This would give Jesus relief from being poked and pressed upon, but yet he was able to minister in a safe place. After teaching for several hours, Jesus requested Peter to launch out into the deep and to cast out his net. Peter replied, "We have toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, we will do this." Well, the men probably thought how ridiculous this was, but again they decided, why not? So they threw their nets over the side, and suddenly their nets were full of fishes. So full they had to call others to come and help them bring the nets in, unless they would break. Peter and James and John, the sons of Zebedee, and the others that were with them were astonished. And Peter fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, "Oh Lord, I am a sinful man." Jesus was all-knowing, and he was able to see something great in Peter and the others. So Jesus told them, "Don't be afraid, because now and from now on, you shall become fishers of men." And they forsook all and followed Jesus. Well, as we consider what just happened, you might ask, well, where did all those fish come from, and how did they get in the net? Well, let me remind you that Jesus is the creator. Two things could have happened. Either Jesus was like a fish whisperer and called all the fish to jump in the net, or I prefer to believe that Jesus created fish from nothing and placed them in the net. Now the king had put John the Baptist in prison because John had told the king it was wrong for him to have his brother's wife for himself. As things happened, the wife and her daughter schemed to have John the Baptist executed. And when it was accomplished, the sad message came to Jesus about the death of his cousin. It was terrible news, and Jesus needed to get away from the enveloping crowds. So he said to his disciples, "Let us take a boat and go to the other side of the lake, to a desert place, and we will rest there." Well, the people were quick to see that Jesus was shipping out, so they decided to go on foot, and perhaps they could get there soon after Jesus arrived. Sure enough, they found Jesus, and he had compassion on them and began to teach them many things until it was late. His disciples came to him and said, "This is a desolate place, and the hour is now late. Why don't you send them away into the surrounding areas, the countryside and the villages, so they can buy themselves something to eat?" But Jesus answered them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy $4,000 worth of bread and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "Well, how many loaves do you have? Go and see." So when they had found out, they came back and they said, "We have 5 loaves and 2 fish." Then Jesus commanded them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups by hundreds and by 50s. And taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, Jesus looked up to heaven and said a blessing. And then he broke the loaves and the fish, giving them to the disciples to set before the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And then they took up 12 baskets full of broken bits of fish and bread. And those who ate the loaves and the fish were 5,000 men. Now notice the 5,000 did not include women and children. Also notice that there were 12 baskets full of food left over. Well, where did all this food come from? Again, we are reminded that Jesus is the creator. And as he broke the bread and the fish into pieces, it was multiplied, and it was enough to feed a multitude of people. Well, immediately, Jesus commanded his disciples to get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. And after he had taken lead of the people, he went up to the mountain to pray. And when darkness fully came, the boat was out on the sea, and Jesus was alone on the land. Jesus could see that they were painfully making little headway, for the wind was against them. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came to them walking on the sea. Well, he meant to pass by, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost. So they cried out, for they saw him and they were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Fear not, it's I, do not be afraid." And when he got into the boat with them, the wind ceased, and they were utterly astonished, for they were still puzzled about the loaves, because their heart was hardened. You might say, how could Jesus walk on the water? I wonder if, since he is the creator, did Jesus make a firm pathway so he could reach their boat? Well, these and many other questions will need to wait until we see Jesus in heaven. In the meantime, I choose to believe, as John told us in his gospel, that Jesus is God and that Jesus is the creator of all things. Until next time, this is Hazel Moon asking that God's blessings will rest upon you as you continue to seek understanding of who is Jesus. Have a blessed evening. God bless you all.